Good evening, YouTube. It's your boy Robski, and I am doing yet another book review. It is February 2nd, February 17th, 2026. And boy, has there been a lot happening since I last um, did a book review. I think the last book review I did was it was Charlie Kirk's book. So that happened a long time ago. When I say a long time ago, about 6, 7 months ago. Boy, there's been a lot of stuff. There's been a lot of stuff going on. Too much stuff to review. Lots of stuff. I mean, we could talk about the ICE raids, the two people in Minneapolis getting shot. I don't really want to go in those waters because you can get a lot of trouble talking politics, and people are very sensitive either side. So I've had some good Christmases and getting ready for baseball. Me and one of my good friends have been training all year, and I'm in pretty good, might not look like it, but I'm actually in pretty good baseball shape. Got my swing dialed in, got my pitches dialed in. It should be a heck of a year for the Boise Mariners, that's for sure. So I made a New Year's resolution to read more classics, and I want to start this book review off by reviewing a very challenging book that I just read, but I did eventually got through. Now, the story about this is I actually started this almost a year ago. I'm no stranger to reading long books. In fact, one of my favorite books of all time, The Stand, is over 1,000 pages, but it was an easy read. This was a tough read because it was Russian literature. It was done by a Russian author, and I'm pretty sure you guys know this book. The author is the legendary Leo Tolstoy, who was born in sometime in the 1800s, before the Russian Revolutionary, the Bolshevik Revolution, all that. Russian history is just fascinating, by the way. After reading this, I've been doing a lot of Russian history. I want to read his first hit book, War and Peace, which is actually written several years before this, but I'm doing Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. This book clocks in at 817 pages, not including the explanations at the back, okay? And this book obviously was originally written in Russian and was translated to English. So I want to do just the basic premise. I don't want to do any spoilers, but what I can say is this book takes a while to get going. It's very controversial, but man, at the end, at the kind of the climax of what happens to one of the main characters, it is a doozy. Like you see what these characters are going through, and it's heartbreaking. It's a tragedy what happens in this book. But I think it's actually very relevant today because some of the themes that are brought up today are very relevant to what people go through, okay? So, let's go with the premise here. The number one thing to remember, to understand about this book, is there's all these different characters, but we want to focus on 4 main characters and their relationship to each other, okay? The first character that I actually like to present is not the title of the book. It is character named Levin, and that is not his full name, but that is just what he's known as. This is what makes Tolstoy's writing style so difficult, is that he has nicknames for the actual full name. But anyways, we're gonna go Levin and his relationship to this young woman named Kitty, Kitty. That's another nickname. Her full name is something different. And you got to understand that all these characters are part of the Russian, high-status Russian aristocracy. So Levin is a wealthy landowner. He has these people called the Muziks, I think what they're called, who work under him. Levin seems to be a good man. He's a hard worker. He goes on some hunts, and he is a very important. He's one of the main characters. So, anyways, Kitty has her parents are went through a controversial relationship. I think it was Kitty's dad was cheating on his mother, but Kitty went back to help that relationship. I didn't quite sure. It was very difficult to read. But anyways, so you have Kitty and Levin, and then the other relationship is Anna Karenina and her lover, colonel in the army named he goes by Vronsky, Vronsky. Okay, so Anna is actually married to this guy named Stepan Arkadyevich. So Alexei Alexandrovna. So she's married to a man 20 years her senior named Alexei Alexandrovna, and he's described as a good moral man. But this Vronsky character is he's like a ladies' man. He's very charming, and he just has a knack for having women fall in love with him. So at the beginning of the book, we find out that Kitty actually has a thing for Vronsky, but Vronsky wants Anna Karenina. So basically, long story short, the book goes through. Anna starts having an affair with Vronsky. Eventually, Anna's husband finds out, and it becomes bad. She gets sick, but then she recovers. But Vronsky's depressed about this. He feels embarrassed, so he attempts a suicide. He survives. Meanwhile, Kitty rejects Levin several times because she wants Vronsky as her lover. But then eventually, go down the book, Kitty finally submits, and Levin becomes eventually married to Kitty. Now, Anna has a son with her first husband, and that becomes a factor later. Basically what happens is Anna discusses with Alexei, her husband. She wants to get a divorce, but Anna is ostracized. See, back in these days when you're married it actually meant something. They took it very, very serious. And it's not like today where, back then divorce was, it was like, shunned. It was terrible. Now it's like, nah, whatever. I mean, people will divorce each other for any reason. But anyways, it's controversial. I'm not going to spoil the ending. But what I can tell you is Levin and Kitty's relationship is a positive one. Anna and Vronsky ends in tragedy, which is so fitting because I see this in real life too. Usually the best relationships and the best people that are in relationships, they do it for different reasons. Vronsky is a ladies' man, so he's extremely handsome man. Anna's extremely pretty woman. And just like in real life, those relationships actually usually end up bad because the core of those relationships are not based on compatibility or anything like that. They're just based on physical attraction. Eventually, the physical attraction wears off. Doesn't matter who you are. Eventually, it all, I'm not saying it goes sour, but it doesn't work because it wears off. The novelty wears off. But what I wanted to kind of emphasize in this book is there's a big tragedy at the end. And again, I'm not going to spoil the book because that's actually what the book is worth reading for. This, like I said, this was a tough book. It's not my favorite book. But the important thing is like, it really discusses on the human condition and being human and what that means and pushes the boundaries by what's actually acceptable in our society. Today, I mean, I can't tell you, I've been the best man at 2 weddings, and both those weddings, I know, those couples ended up divorced after 5 years, and the divorces were not something that was good. It was preventable, but it was just generally accepted. This book goes through some of the stuff we live today, like married couples having affairs, what's actually okay, what's worth what, and how do we go about that? Even in a more traditional society like 1800s Russia, there was still affairs, people doing things that are frowned upon. Okay, I think today it's more common and more acceptable. I don't think though that just because it's common or acceptable doesn't mean it's wrong. Okay, now I'm saying this, as you can see in the background, I have a crucifix. Okay, so therefore you can assume correctly that I am some form of Christian, which I am. I was born in the Catholic Church, and especially in the Catholic Church over other Christian denominations, we probably frown on divorce more than any other denomination. I don't know how the Mormon Church works, but I know that it seems like that divorce is acceptable with just other denominations. You can debate that in the Bible. There's lots of scriptures in the Bible about divorce being bad, being a sin, making you an adulterer or adulteress. Then there's supposedly just passages that counteract that. Unfortunately, it's kind of, I think it's left up to your opinion as a human, and it doesn't matter what you really think. I just know what happens. Okay, but what is not arguable is that there is a price to pay. That is 100% correct. So even if you go to some of these other non-denominational churches and they accept another marriage or another relationship, there's a price to pay. Okay, I'm not saying it's okay or not okay. I'm just saying that when you become cleaved to another human being, when you become intimate with another human being, you go down it's not free. There is always a consequence, whether what relationship it is or not. Now, I think the reason why that you see this in Christianity, they had one man for one woman. The reason why that's there isn't necessarily, God preaching about sin, but it's the best way to go through life. Okay, it's the best way. If you have a man and a woman together for their lifetime, you're going to get less. It's a better way to raise kids. You're going to get less tragic things happen. But we all know the reality, and we all know that it doesn't happen like that for, I'd say, over 50%. I don't know the exact statistics on that, but I live in reality. Regardless if you think it's okay or not, people who have been married and divorced, they are damaged in some way. It's just the nature of how humans are meant, and it's real. And especially when you bring in affairs with other people, that's another set of issues that makes it more complicated. That's why typically people who, the more that you get divorced or remarried, the less likely those other marriages will work. That's statistically correct and accurate. It's the same thing with, I don't want to get into these controversial red pill topics, but if you know what I'm talking about people's, history romantically with other people. So this is what this book talks about. So I'm going to go ahead and rank it. If I was going to rank this, if I have 1 through 10, I really didn't like it that much. It was too difficult to understand. I liked the ending a lot, but I'm going to give it a 5. And what's crazy is this is one of the best, supposedly, like, you go through all these pages, they regard this in such high regard. I didn't like it that much, just because of the difficulty. The characters were, they weren't they weren't as relatable, they weren't as memorable, and they really, you know, I mean, Vronsky was like a playboy. Levin was, I think, I wasn't too impressed with that guy. I mean, there was no Stu Redmonds or, you know, there's no like Roland of Gilead's. I know I'm going a lot of Stephen King references, but there just wasn't anybody I could really relate to. I think some of the premises were great, but again, I just don't rank it that high. It wasn't one of my favorites. It was, in my opinion, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. Honestly, with this book, I would recommend you just read overviews because it really wasn't that pleasant to read until about halfway through. So I'll give it 5 out of 10, but that's what I do. Robski out.